Da er vi klar for en ny presentasjon her i Televerket. Og da er det Eline Henriksen som skal fortelle om Argo CD on easymode. Gi en stor applaus.
Okay, good morning everyone. So I was out drinking with the other presenters yesterday. That was really fun. I might have had a couple of too many drinks because when I got back to my hotel room, I was going to charge my watch. So I was totally sure I put it on the charger. And when I woke up today, I'd placed it on a banana. So I might be looking at my watch, but that's not going to help. In any case, I was talking to some of the other speakers, and I realized like most of the time I was speaking English. So I originally said like I was going to hold this talk in Norwegian, but is everyone okay with English? Because obviously like there's a lot of foreign people here. So yeah, good. Okay, let's get started. So first of all, what's your name? Bjarte. Bjarte. Okay, this is Bjarte. Bjarte is working in a company where he is a front-end developer. He's working on an application that's really important for the organization. And this is a Friday. He's taking his skis with him to work, and he's ready to go out and have a good time. It's coming close to like 3, 4 o'clock. And then suddenly he gets a message from his boss saying, the site is down. Something's broken. What do we do? And he has to drop everything. He has to sit down and start working on this website. And he finds the fix quite quickly. But the issue is the infrastructure that he is working on doesn't really let him deploy things very quickly. So he ends up spending 1 hour, 2 hours trying to get approvals from managers to deploy things into production. He spends time actually building. It takes a long time. And the deployment. So his plans for the weekend are ruined. And that's no fun. My name's Eline. As I said, I come from Telenor. So Telenor is a really interesting and fun company. We have open positions, if you're interested in that. And if you're looking at me on the internet, this is where you'll find me. You'll notice the new Blue Sky thing, which is like the replacement to Twitter. If you're not on Blue Sky, I don't know what you're doing, because the exodus has begun. You should be there. In any case, why were we talking about this developer, right? This developer is working on a product team in this company. That product team owns a couple of products, and their job is to work on developing this product and make it as good as possible. I come from a platform team, and in this model, as you see, which is I forget the name, but it's a book. Team Topologies. Yeah, thank you. I thought I had my notes here, but they're actually here, so that's good. So yeah, this is based on a book called Team Topologies, where you have a couple of teams. The platform team is there to abstract away the tooling that the product teams need. Like, why should every product team need to worry with how you get stuff into production? Like, why do they need to have their own Argo or Grafana or whatever? So that's moved out. So I'm going to be talking a little bit from the perspective of a platform team, but you also have other teams like enabling teams in this model. So it hopefully doesn't come as a controversial statement that we on platform teams, we exist to support the product teams. That's our job, to make their lives as good as possible. So that's one of the needs of these teams. And these product teams, they generally have some sort of a product portfolio. So a product team might have several products that they're working on. So our infrastructure needs to be able to handle all these different products, all these different microservices, and deploy them in as easy a way as possible. That's another need. And these product teams, generally speaking, will be trying to work on some sort of continuous improvement model if they're doing stuff the right way. So they'll put stuff into production, they'll try out hypotheses, they'll try and see if this change works or if it didn't really work. And that means that they need to have really rapid deployment. They can't be waiting hours or days for deployments when they want to have stuff out so they can test hypotheses. And these kinds of autonomous teams that can make their own decisions based on the inputs from their users, these teams need tools. And that's our job from the platform team's perspective. Let's build these tools to make their lives as easy as possible. And there's another perspective to this as well, which is the security angle. So we want to build tools that build in security as part of the platform, right? But generally speaking, when you add more security, you might be taking away some usability. This is like the classical trade-off. More usability means you need to take away some security, for example. Another way to look at this is, so you add more security, but maybe that means you need to have some approval process, or you need to restrict the teams somehow. So you have to reduce autonomy. So this security versus autonomy trade-off is kind of tricky. So that's where we get to the actual solutions. How can we solve all these different requirements in a good way? So what I'm about to show you is based on my experiences from a couple of different companies where we have iterated a lot on the architecture of our deployments. And our feedback has been that this is really nice to work with. So hopefully, this so-called apps repo architecture is going to be something that you can take inspiration from as well. So I don't have time, unfortunately, to give you all the details about what Argo CD is, but this is based on Argo CD. And just to give you a little overview of what we're talking about, so we will generally have two types of repositories. So we will have a source code repository, and we will have a manifest repository. The source code is where your application source code lives. And that source code will be updated by the developers, and it will be built into some sort of artifact that you want to deploy, right? And then on the other side, you have the manifest repo, which we call the apps repo. That's where all the details of what it's going to look like on Kubernetes lives, like your deployment YAML files, your config maps, all that stuff. That lives here. And whenever that is updated, that gets synced into Kubernetes. So that's how the deployment looks. So whenever an artifact like a Docker image is generated from the source code, that updates this stuff, which makes Argo CD sync it into production. That's the short description. And inside of the manifest repository, you're going to have some manifests, obviously, but you want to group them somehow. So how would you want to group them? Again, this is based on our experiences. And our experiences have been that it's nice to have like a grouping directory at the top, like an environment directory, which just holds everything else. Under there, we can have folders that specify different clusters, like cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3, or cluster 200, and whatever, how many the last presenter had. And under there, you put all the namespaces that you want to have on that cluster. Inside of that directory, you put all the stuff that you want Argo CD to sync in, right? So with this structure, you can add new directories on demand, which will trigger the deployment of a new namespace. And that way you get automatically provisioned namespaces. I'm going to get back to that. But this directory structure is significant because it's used by Argo CD to pick up different, call them configurations. And then you can have some other directories which specify like reusable content, like your Helm charts or your YAML templates or whatever, so you don't have to repeat stuff in here all the time. So this is based on application sets in Argo CD. And since we're going to use application sets, I thought, let's talk a little bit about what that is before we dive into it. So first of all, what's an application, right? That's this stuff. That's what Argo CD does to configure a sync between a Git repository over to Kubernetes. So applications are what configure the actual syncing. And then you have application sets. So application sets are kind of like application factories. So it helps you dynamically create applications based on, for example, like you saw on the previous slide, the structure of the directories. So if you had to go in here and make one application for every single directory, that would be a lot of work. This application set thing automates that. And this is a core part of Argo CD. It's not like an add-on or whatever. This is made by the Argo CD people. So, yeah, it's first-party supported. And it, as you will see, enables us to build in a lot of stuff to how the applications are made. So, let's tempt the demo gods and see if we can actually build an application set together. So, first of all, what we're going to be working with is this repository right here. It contains a couple of things, mainly like this directory. This directory contains the namespaces that we just saw from the previous picture. And in here we have, for example, a test app, which is just like some deployment stuff. Like, I guess I can click on it and you can see. This is JSON. It's just like a fancy way of templating YAML. So let's get this stuff deployed, right? I'm going to get my, that's not the one I wanted. Let's see. I'm going to get my VS Code. There it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically make a new file. Can I do that in this one? Yeah, there we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to build this application set out. So all applications or things in Kubernetes always starts with API version. I think I should be able to get some help here too. This was way more fun when I actually had internet to use. There we go. Argo project. Yeah, there we go. So this is going to be an application set. And like all Kubernetes stuff, we need some sort of metadata that tells us what this actually is named and where it's going to be placed. So we're just going to call this application set example infra apps, because that's the name of the repository. In addition to that, we need to write out what this application set is actually going to do. So it's going to do a couple of things. First of all, I just added this because I don't want things to explode when I accidentally delete something, so you can ignore that. This is the interesting stuff. So application sets in Argo CD are built with generators. Yes, of course. Thank you. So let's see, B. So application sets in Argo CD, they use generators. And we're going to use the generators, and we're going to use the directories part of the generators here. What we're going to do is we're just going to say, pick up everything that's in env, the env directory. And we're going to have a wildcard that says everything under env, and then another wildcard, which is everything under that again, which is the namespaces, right? And then we need to add some more stuff. We need to add repo URL. I'm sorry, it's a little hard for me to read from the side, but that's going to be this. The revision, we can just use head. So now we have our generator set up. This should just work. This should pick up the correct directories. In addition to that, we just add some more stuff, which tells us we're going to use the more modern Go templating syntax. And then we get to the actual application that we're going to build. So much like deployments in Kubernetes, this specifies a template wherein, like a Kubernetes deployment, the template would be of a pod. But here it is of an Argo CD application. So yeah, we're going to give this application a name. The application is going to take its name based on the directory structure. So the directory structure here is basically what we do is we take the name of the outermost directory, which is the namespace, and then we dash, and we have segment 1, which is the cluster. So this is going to be called like namespace dash cluster, so that we don't get like overlapping applications if we, for example, have one Argo CD that manages multiple clusters. After that, the spec of the Argo CD application. So we're going to deploy to some namespace. Again, we can use like the namespace here. Segment 2 is the same as base name. And then the name in this context is actually the cluster name as it's called in Argo CD. So we say, okay, everything that this generator generates, deploy it to this cluster. We can just say like default project for now. And after this, we want to have where it's going to be syncing from. So that's just going to be like the path in the Git repository that it just picked up. And it's the same repository. So the same repository there. And again, target revision head. So that says from and to. This is going to sync from this and to that. And now, as infrastructure people, as infrastructure team, we can go in and we can say, like, what's this going to build out in terms of behavior for this application? So it's going to create the namespace automatically. We can say that it's going to turn on auto-sync, and it's going to have a couple of different options. And that's it. That's basically the application set that we are going to deploy. So let's have a look. I'm going to pull in my terminal here. That's also a little small even for me. So we're going to deploy this example. I pre-made it because I wasn't sure I was going to type everything correctly. Yeah. So we just added this application set to the cluster now. What is this going to look like? So I have an Argo CD running here, and it just logged me out. But what you saw before it logged me out is there was nothing there. And now I just need to log back in. So give me the password. And now, if I clear all my filters, you can see it's automatically created all its applications just based on the directory structure within the infrastructure repo, within the app repo. So you can see, for example, the one we were looking at, I think it was this one. Here's all the deployments that it just picked up. And if we were to add another directory within here, that would automatically create a new namespace and set up all this stuff. Very cool. So that's how application sets work. And you might be thinking, like, okay, I'm up here talking about this apps repo architecture thing, but don't we already have like some best practices out there that we can use? Like, what about the apps in apps stuff? Well, yes, we do. And these are not like mutually exclusive things. So you can use this with apps in apps, because apps in apps is basically just, it says like, you have these Argo CD applications, and you can group them by other Argo CD applications. What this does is it tries to standardize like how the repositories, the manifest repositories look. Because if we do that, then we can create a lot of cool application sets that we can share between each other. And it also defines, based on our best practices, a very clear ownership model between the infrastructure team and the application teams. So you would see, like, generally the platform team would control all the cluster scoped resources. They would make like the app projects, as they're called, and the platform team owns the application sets. And because the application sets make the applications, which make the namespaces, the platform team owns the structure of the namespaces, because they own like the templating of the namespaces. Whereas the product team, they have more or less full control over their own namespaces. So they can put in deployments, they can put in config maps, whatever they want. And they own the directory structure of their apps repository. So they can create a new directory which instantiates this structure, which means that they can create new namespaces on the fly. Cool. And if you watched this talk at KubeCon this year in Europe, this is a talk by Marco De Benedictis, who talks about namespaces. He also confirms this. So he says namespaces should be assigned to tenants. Why? Well, because namespaces, they're basically a mechanism for setting a lot of things which maybe a product team shouldn't be allowed to do, like setting pod security policies on the entire namespace. So should a product team need to do that? Maybe not. So namespaces are a very nice like multi-tenancy system that should be somehow managed by the product teams. So our goal with this architecture is to basically facilitate for self-service. The product teams should be able to set up namespaces on the fly. We thought a lot about security as well, which we will get back to. So how can we do this autonomous self-service stuff in a secure and easy way without making undue restrictions for the product teams, without taking away their autonomy? Because you might have, like, let's say you as a product team, you want to create a new namespace. If you have all the freedom in the world to create whatever namespace you want, then you could have like a scenario where you create a namespace that has a name collision with another namespace. So you can be overwriting another team's namespaces. That's a problem, right? So how do we solve that? Let's see if we can fix that. So now going back to this demo, I'm going to show you another repository. So this is the repository of a hypothetical team. Let's see. Yeah, this is the repository of a hypothetical team. So this team has a set of namespaces that they want to create. They have a couple of example dash namespaces, and they have another one called no dash namespace. So the way we're thinking of solving this is product teams, they get assigned a prefix, right? So you as a product team, you have a set of products, and those products, like let's say you work on like payment system, maybe you would get the payment system prefix. So then you can create directories that start with payment system dash. But if you try to create something else, that's not going to be allowed. So as long as we on the infrastructure team can have some sort of control over these prefixes and who are allowed to use them, then this is going to work. So let's have a look at this. The way we make this work is twofold. So first of all, we have this thing called an app project. That's something in Argo CD which basically allows us to set up some permission stuff. And you see here, this team, this example team, has been given access to the destination example-star. That's the first part of this. The second bit is on the application sets that we build out, we as the infrastructure team, we assign this project to the application set so that that team will only be able to create applications connected to that project with those permissions. So let's try to add this and see what happens. So we just added this project and we added the application set for this team, right? So if we go back to Argo CD now, and I go back to the applications page, there's more stuff here, and that's good. And we can just filter by project and this team. So these are the things that were created from that app's repo. And you can see that they have gotten these two applications and they work well. But you can see that this other one is not. So if we click into that, you will see it has one error. And that's because they have not been assigned this prefix. That's what it says here. It's not allowed to do that. So that way we can prevent that this team can overwrite other teams' namespaces while still allowing them to create namespaces on the fly. So that's more or less what everyone's doing in Argo CD. But I'm going to show you one more thing, which probably not that many people are doing, which I think is cool. So let's do self-service configuration of applications within these apps repositories. So I'm now going to go to a little bit more complicated application set. We're like building on the things we've already established. So this final application set here looks maybe a bit intimidating, but it's not that bad. So what we have is the same thing as before. We have like the application set stuff, but you'll see we have more generators here. And what do these generators do? Well, we have the same thing that we had previously, right? So we have this Git directory, which it looks into the directory structure of our apps repositories, and it picks up anything there. So that's the same as before. And then we have this other generator down here. This is interesting because what it does is it merges these two generators together. And this one is looking for a file called config.json. So provided that this file exists, it will be merged with the other generator. The contents of this file will be treated as options, and what we have defined here are like the defaults for these options. And that enables us to do some pretty cool things. We can go down to the bottom here, for example, where you see we're taking these options, like the auto sync option, and we're setting it into the application if it is provided. So this team has the ability to set this option, which will affect the look of the application in a way that we control as the infrastructure team. And in practice, what it looks like, I'll just reset this. This can create in the meantime. What it looks like in practice is a team is going to be able to create a directory which doesn't have any particular files in it. It just uses the default behavior. Or they can choose to have a directory which has this special config.json file in it, which contains these options. So that enables this team to say, okay, this directory, have this not autosync, but the default behavior by the generated applications are always autosync, but you can override that. So this is really flexible and nice. Let's see if it works. Let's see. This always takes longer than I'm comfortable with. Yeah, it hasn't picked it up yet. Sometimes it takes a little while. Okay, we'll come back to this. It's conference Wi-Fi and stuff also. But yeah. So this is pretty cool. Like, you can have self-service and security in the same system. And if we try and summarize some of the things that we've been through now, our experience by implementing this architecture is that teams are really happy with it. Because what they have to do, their mental model of Kubernetes is, I just create a directory in my special repository, and I add some stuff in there, and that just syncs, and now you're in production. I have seen teams go from like nothing on Kubernetes, to being in production in basically one day with this system. No fiddling around with like weird stuff. You just put a file in a directory and you're done. So this helps simplify for the product teams all the complex Kubernetes stuff. Fun thing is, when we rolled this out to some of our product teams, we were on-premise, and this worked so well for the product teams that basically they said to us like, oh, you want us to move to public cloud? Why? This works so well. That's a discussion I didn't think I would have with on-premise stuff. It has very good synergies with like GitOps. You can just put like a file that describes your database, and then from your pull request, you set up this directory, which has a preview branch, which spins up a database for your preview branch. And when your pull request closes, you just delete the directory, and it cleans everything up. It's very nice. There are some challenges, maybe. I don't have time to go into every single one of them, but I'll just touch on them. Like, application sets are a bit tricky to test and debug. So that's why I think doing what we're doing right now, which is providing some of these application sets to you, is going to help you out by getting started, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel by yourself. The blast radius is also a bit tricky. Like, well, what happens if you mess up your application set? Do you delete everything on your cluster? You could. but you can put in configuration to prevent that. Our experience has also been that like we give a product team an apps repo, but what if that product gets moved to another product team? How are you going to move stuff from one repo to another? You can do it, but it's a bit tricky. So that depends on like your organization. Are you moving your stuff around a lot? If so, maybe you want to think something else, but in my experience, it hasn't been a problem. This thing is a bit tricky. Like if you are able to create namespace files, like namespace YAML files, within your apps repo, then you can affect other people's repositories, even namespaces, even if you have that thing set in the app project in Argo CD. So you need to have some sort of a policy that says that you cannot create namespace YAML files. And also, like, if you have the config.json thing, you see that we're putting it into templates. So we have to sanitize the inputs of those templates to make sure that they don't, put a new line and like start messing with our templates. And this thing is a bit of a nuisance. It was like this a couple of months ago. I haven't checked recently, but like if you change some of the labels that you set on the namespace in the application set, then you're not going to see a diff for that in Argo CD. You just have to sync all your stuff, and that diff should apply, even though it's not visible. Yeah. So to wrap up, like, do you need... I see a lot of people out there having like custom-built namespace operators and solutions to like provision new namespaces. Do you need a namespace operator? Well, let's look at it. So with Argo CD, you're able to deploy everything that Argo CD supports. You're able to deploy Helm charts, you're able to deploy YAML files, you can make your own stuff. You can set like pod security labels on namespaces from the application sets. You can enable Istio by setting labels. You can allow list teams to create namespaces by using prefixes. You can have full self-service customization without the product teams having to worry about the complexities of Argo CD applications. Whereas if you write your own operator, you have to worry about all this stuff. You have to worry about the reconcile loop. You have to worry about teaching your team Golang. Like, not everyone's going to know Golang from the start. You have to worry about deploying new versions of the operator. What if your library that you use suddenly has a breaking change? You need to update your code to reflect that. You need to do security updates. You need to monitor the uptime and have some sort of a deployment pipeline for this. There's a lot of stuff when you write an operator, but it is more flexible. So it could be that you need this. But I think realistically, most people are not going to need a namespace operator. Most people are going to be completely fine with Argo CD and the features that it provides, provided that they actually use them. Because there's a lot of cool stuff in here that you probably aren't using. So with this architecture that we've talked about, I think we can say, easy mode unlocked. We did it. That's our experience, and I want to share this with you as well. So I've created a repository on GitHub, which has all these examples, and it has some more descriptions. I'm going to write more stuff there as well, but for now it's not fully written out. If you want a more like detailed description, there's a blog post over at Kartverket's platform team's blog that you can read that explains more of this. But for now, have a look. Tell me what you think. And with that, that's the end of my talk.
Thank you very much. Questions? I had one on the...
Yeah, I was wondering, I mean, the benefit of using application set is it's apparent with regards to usability for the developers, but are there any security concerns with having them being able to create the applications themselves? Or is there anything, I mean, if you use app projects properly, is there anything that you shouldn't, like a reason why they should not do it?
Yeah, like I mentioned, there's the possibility of creating a namespace YAML files. That needs to be tightened down with policies. But like, if you have this mental model that the product teams, like, they own their namespaces, they can do whatever they want in there. As long as you're able to control like the cluster scoped things, then that should be fine. So as a platform team, you obviously control like cluster RBAC, not like namespace, but cluster scoped RBAC. So if we can tighten that down, then it should be fine. Yeah.
I saw some other hands. Or any other questions? No? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Eline. Give her a good applause. We will, of course, be around here and talking the whole day. So I guess if you have any questions you're not wanting to ask in public, then Eline will be here. And now we have a 20-minute break. So the next talk will start here at 11:15. So feel free to go around and mingle and get some more coffee and talk with some new people. Thank you.